So it's been 9 years, I think, since I've actually put anything on here. And I felt compelled to do so because in my travels over the last 9 years, I've seen a lot of hate, a lot of violent rhetoric. And I didn't post anything about it because at that point I realized that nothing anybody said really is going to do any good. We live in a circus country at this point. But the thing is that circus and all these clowns are coming from the liberals. It's coming from the left. And after this past weekend, where in Chicago, an educator, a teacher, and I use that term loosely, was seen at a No Kings protest or one of those idiotic protests, mimicking the assassination of Charlie Kirk, in fact, making fun of it, and was found out. Is it the Nathan Hale Elementary School or intermediate school, something like that? They've since taken down their website. They have since deleted their social media page. If you try to call there, all of their inboxes are full. You can still, in fact, email the principal, which I, in fact, did. Now, I don't live in Chicago, but I do live in the Midwest, and I don't live too far from Chicago. And I feel like it is every American's duty and responsibility to call out any educator who condones, supports, or encourages any type of violence against anyone, be they, political figures, public figures, private citizens, children, or any of that. And I think it's interesting that they are utilizing this sort of ideology to fuel their No Kings protest. Well, let me go ahead and spell it out for you. No Kings protest is stupid. First of all, if President Trump were looking to be a king, you wouldn't be allowed to protest. But in fact, you are. It is guaranteed to you by the Constitution of the United States to petition the government for redress of grievances. But that's not what these people are doing. They simply don't like President Trump because the media told them not to. And I was not a big fan of President Trump in his first term. And when he was elected this time, wasn't a big fan this time either. I thought it was a circus. But liberals, you've now made a Trump supporter out of me. So congratulations, because your idiotic No Kings protest. Let me tell you something. We had a No Kings protest in this country. It took place from July of 1776 to September of 1783. It was called the Revolutionary War, where King George was told in no uncertain terms, you will not rule over us. People in this country fail to realize that not only do you have representation in Washington, D.C., representation that you voted for, and in states like Illinois, Minnesota, California, New York, you typically elect very liberal, far left ideology congressmen and women and senators, some of whom are not born U.S. citizens, but naturalized. They immigrated here. They immigrated here from a country that would oppress them. And then they come here and they get elected, and they would actually try to enact laws in direct contradiction of the Constitution of the United States. And yes, I'm specifically talking about the Second Amendment, but also the First Amendment, to oppress you. These are the same people, they believe in nothing. They believe in nothing. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in the right to defend one's home. They simply want you to live in a police state where only they have control over the people with guns. And it's never been more apparent than when we talk about, Minnesota, the gun laws there, the gun laws in New York, the gun laws in California. And then when a conservative president sends in the National Guard to help curb the violence that comes from the ghettos in these places. Chicago, very specifically, people call it Chirac for a reason. The liberal governance there defends these criminals. They defend them. They talk about gun violence. They talk about wanting to get rid of guns. But let's talk about liberal violence. Let's talk about the fact that in 2020, when George Floyd, and if you watch the entire video of the George Floyd incident in Minnesota, you'll see that, number one, there were multiple races involved in George Floyd's death as police officers. It wasn't just Derek Chauvin, the white man. But the liberal media failed to cover that. He was initially put in the car and then asked, he couldn't breathe, so he asked to lay down. So they took him out and he started bucking on him. They laid him down. He kept bucking on him. So they restrained him. And if you actually look at the full video, the guy's knee wasn't even on his neck. It was proven through the autopsy that the man had drugs in his system, which directly affected his death. I'm not going to bring up the man's past. I'm only going to bring up the fact that in that moment, he was high. They talk about, cardiac arrest, probably had something to do with the drugs in his system. Now, there are other mitigating factors, and did those cops overreact? I believe they absolutely did, but not to the level that the liberal media made it out to be, and not the level to where the liberals went to burn down cities, defund the police. How'd that work out there in Seattle and in Portland? They couldn't even muster the ability for basic services within that area. And I'm not talking about the cops being there. I'm talking about fire departments were afraid to go in there. Rescue squads were afraid to go in there. The garbage man was afraid to go collect the garbage. They don't have the mental capacity or intelligence to actually govern themselves. Now, the police are supposed to serve the people. And there are some issues there that absolutely need to be remedied. But taking to the streets and burning down your own neighborhood, which is quite possibly the dumbest thing you could do, the local markets, the housing projects, the Section 8 housing that the government provides for low-income families, you burned them down. You burned down your own neighborhoods in protest of something. I mean, how stupid can you be? But let's go over the liberal violence over the last several years. Of course, we just went over the 2020 George Floyd thing. But what about that Tennessee shooting of that school where somebody who hadn't attended that elementary school in years was still pissed off that they were bullied by people, but it wasn't those kids, because they were transgender. So they shot the place up and killed some kids. Liberal. The assassination attempts against President Trump when he was running for president. People say, and I've seen this, and I've blocked people on my social media for saying, I still have scars on my ear from when my ears were pierced in the 9th grade. Good for you. But somebody shot at that man, and that was a liberal ideology. And not only did they do it once, but they tried to do it again down in Florida. Why? If you people are so against gun violence, why is it everybody's taking up guns on the liberal side of things to silence people who don't agree with them? The assassination attempt at the congressional baseball practice of Steve Scalise, the Abundant Life Church school shooting, the Minnesota Catholic school shooting, gun violence, all of them, all perpetrated by liberals. None of it, mind you, is denounced by the liberal leadership, Gavin Newsom out in California, Maxine Waters, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Barack Obama. A lot of conservatives didn't like the fact that a Democrat was elected president after George W. and Barack Obama. Not only did they not like that, they didn't like that he was elected twice, because he did systematically, in a lot of ways, destroy certain portions of this country with his governance. And so did the liberal Congress. Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel. Kamala Harris is a hypocrite. For all of his faults, and for people that don't like Donald Trump, at least he means what he says, and he says what he means, and he does what he says he's going to do. And he has no problem opening up and being transparent to the American public about it. The problem is the liberals have always called for transparency in government. But they really don't know what to do with that transparency. They don't know what to do when somebody says what they mean. They want comforting lies, not inconvenient truths. And the inconvenient truth is that gun violence over the last 7 or 8 years has predominantly been by the left, the liberals. And Donald Trump's like, I've had enough of it. We're not going to allow illegal immigrants into this country, and most of whom are actually criminals, but the simple fact illegal means illegal. And when they're not using guns, when they're not using guns. They're out there burning Teslas. Everybody loved electric vehicles. Everybody loved it when Joe Biden was president, and they thought that Elon Musk was a liberal. But then they come to find out that he's not such a liberal, and they start burning up Teslas and keying them and destroying personal property. And the liberal politicians and the liberal media can sit there and they can promote this kind of thing because they live in gated communities. They are part of the problem. They're part of the very problem they tell you to protest against, but you're too stupid to figure it out. The train stabbing in Charlotte. Liberal laws. Now, North Carolina is one of those swing states. It can be blue, it can be red. It doesn't, it doesn't factor in every time. But when you get into those urban areas, they are typically very, very liberal, very Democrat. And as such, they will release a man who is charged with violent, heinous crimes with a mental condition on his own recognizance. A man of color who gets onto a train and stabs a woman, and right before he does so, he says he's going to stab this white bitch. That's a hate crime. But was it charged as a hate crime? No, because only white people can be charged with hate crimes. And yeah, I'm going to come out and say it. I'm going to say some things that people are really not going to like. And they're going to say, oh, you're a racist. No, I'm not a racist. I'm a realist. Because the fact is, you will not find a single person of color, a single so-called minority, charged with a hate crime when they have enacted violence on a white person simply because they are white. People will sit there and talk about women's rights and this and that. The liberals love to talk about that. It was a white woman. No hate crime. And he was heard saying, white bitch. And everybody else on that train, I understand Good Samaritan laws are horseshit. People don't want to get involved. They don't want to get involved. But it's cowardice. Everyone on that train who saw what happened, complete coward. Complete coward. The thing about all of these incidents is everybody wants to blame Donald Trump. So my question is, what laws has Donald Trump imposed? What laws has Donald Trump signed into, in fact, law that Congress would have had to propose and vote upon, has actually violated the rights of any American citizen? Let me say that again. What has he done, signed into law or any of that has violated the rights of the American citizens, not the illegals? The illegals have no rights. They came here illegally. They are trespassing. Okay? The Constitution is there to afford and defend and uphold and secure the rights of American citizens, not against intruders, not against invaders. I don't care if they flew here on a visa and they were here legally and their visa expired. Once their visa expired, they are here illegally. If they ran across the border, they are here illegally. Most illegal immigration doesn't even take place at the borders. At the actual physical borders. It takes place through the airports because people will come here on visas and they overstay their welcome. But all these virtue signalers out there, there's no such thing as an illegal human. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, there is. And if you go to any foreign country and you are caught in their country and you are not authorized to be in their country, meaning your visa has expired or you snuck into the country, they will deport you. In some countries, they'll just autonomously kill you. The problem with all of these people out here talking about there's no such thing as an illegal human, one, probably don't have a job. Two, don't have a passport. Three, have probably never been out of the country. And a lot of people say, oh, well, how do you know their life? Because I know the type. And yes, it is a generalization. And yes, it is a stereotype. And those stereotypes exist for a reason. They get all mad on these ICE raids. Coming across the border illegally, staying in this country illegally. What part of illegal do you people not understand? It is a crime. People say, oh, well, it's just a civil infraction. No, it is not. It's not. Local law enforcement, because of liberal administration, passing laws, local law enforcement is not allowed to even report infractions regarding citizenship, illegal entry into this country, etc., to federal law enforcement. That's a liberal ideology. But when one of those illegals, and people say, oh, well, there's so few and far between of these criminals that are illegal. No, it's not, because what they do is they a lot of times use that southern border, our ports of debarkation. They use our airports for human trafficking, drug trafficking, etc. And there are far more of those than there are people just coming across from farm work. Because the people that come across for farm work, and if you've ever been in the southwestern United States, you've ever been out to California, those people do have day work permits. Farmers actually procure them for these people, and they are vetted. And it is a step towards citizenship should they decide they want to come to this country. It's when they come here for their work and they disappear from the job and they run off. They become an illegal immigrant. They become an illegal. And the very term illegal indicates they have broken a law. No different than shoplifting, reckless driving, DUI. It's that simple. And I challenge anyone, oh, well, it's just a DUI. Oh, well, it's just shoplifting. No, DUIs can lead to the death of American citizens, and we've seen it many times. Truck drivers being given CDLs out in California, driving all the way to Florida, making illegal U-turns because they don't speak English, they can't read English signs, and kill a family in a minivan. It happened. And that CDL was issued in California. And all California can say is, well, look at Texas. Texas has all legal CDL holders, and they have far more accidents than Californians do. No. Texas has far more CDL accidents because there's a lot more commerce that goes in and out of Texas than does California. Because businesses and citizens are leaving California, and then they go to another state, and they try to turn that state into the same shithole they came from, the same way these immigrated individuals who are elected to Congress try to turn this country into the same shithole they came from. If you don't believe me, look no further than Northern Virginia, Fairfax. It happens. It happens all the time. It's happened in Texas. It happened several places. Go to Minneapolis. All of these refugees that came over from Somalia. Dearborn, Michigan. Look closer. Because those people are legal and they're still trying to turn it into the same shithole that they came from. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Liberal ideology has run rampant across this nation. You cannot use certain words or they're going to cancel you now. The liberals want to cancel you. However, that so-called educator in Chicago this past weekend, I think her name is Rodriguez, Lucy Rodriguez, I believe was her name, or Lucy Ramirez or something like that, at the Nathan Hale Elementary School or Nathan Hale School there in Chicago. If she's to lose her job because of the things that she said and the visual aids that she provided, mimicking herself being shot in the neck the way Charlie Kirk was, she's going to go on and cry that she lost her job because she said and did something stupid. And she's going to say, I can't believe I lost my job. Now what am I going to do? How about trying not being a horrible human being? Cancel culture seems to work really well for the liberals when it's something a conservative says that they don't like. But when a liberal says something that is so far off base and so wrong and so heinous, and they get canceled, well, then all the other liberals come up in an uprising. When conservatives get canceled, they just move on to the next thing. The problem is, liberals do not want to engage in conversation that's going to fix this country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders were just on CNN. Mind you, CNN, who makes up far more stories than Fox News ever did, but both of them are equally worthless news media outlets. But they said that the Democrats are the ones trying to get the Republicans to the table to end the government shutdown. The Democrats are not going to budge on trying to give trillions of dollars to illegal immigrants for things such as Medicaid, for things, all kinds of socialist assistance. And certain socialist programs are absolutely necessary, even in a capitalist system, for that society to thrive. However, it should be reserved for American citizens and American citizens only. End of story. We should not be funneling money, just like during the COVID relief program. We gave billions of dollars to Pakistan for gender studies. So I'm going to sum this up for you real quick. There are two genders. If you have, it was spelled out by a child in the movie Kindergarten Cop. Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. I don't care what you imagine you are. I imagine myself as a millionaire, but it doesn't put millions of dollars in my bank account. So you can pretend to be whatever you want. Fine, do you. But do not expect the rest of the world, and especially the rest of this country, to play along in fantasy land. okay? It's just that simple. And you absolutely should not be permitted to do it if you are a child in a public school system, pretending to be a cat laying in a cat bed, eating out of a cat bowl, and disrupting class by hissing at other classmates, because that does in fact happen. Happened in Fauquier County, Virginia, at the Warrenton Middle School. And they allowed it to happen. Happens all the time when you see these drag queens going out to, parades and pride and this and that. But here's the thing, pride is only applicable to the alphabet soup community. Because if you're proud to be a heterosexual, all of a sudden you're a cisgendered bigot. And that's bullshit. It's utter and complete bullshit. And while we're on the subject, liberals love to sit there and say that things said by the president could warp the minds of young children. However, a man dressed as a woman in an overly sexualized outfit reading to children, that's not going to, shape their young minds one way or another. How about we just stop all that shit? Okay? Be you, do you, and don't try to affect anyone else. If you wish to sit and have a civil discussion about the subject with someone, absolutely, please do so. But don't sit there and try to slam the other side for their beliefs simply because you don't believe it. And that goes for conservatives and liberals. Conservatives, someone being a drag queen does absolutely nothing to affect your life. Just be kind to one another. Is it really that hard? Apparently it is for liberals. Because while there's a lot of words coming from the conservative side, there is a lot of violence coming from the liberal side. Most of it is gun violence, the very gun violence they claim to be against. The very gun violence that they wish to end through common sense gun laws and gun control. I'm just going to go ahead and let you know something. Gun control is only going to prohibit legal gun owners from exercising their Second Amendment right. Criminals will always find a pretext for crime. Tyrants will always find a pretext for tyranny, and terrorists will always find a pretext for terror. Cain killed Abel with a rock. In the medieval times, when there were no guns, there were bows and arrows and swords. There were, all manner of weaponry that killed one another. Evil people will always find a way to enact evil. Timothy McVeigh, perfect example. The Unabomber, perfect example. And for those of you that like to use words like fascist and Nazi, let me go ahead and explain something to you, a little bit of a history lesson. The Nazis first disarmed their citizens. They enacted things like universal health care. And they made the citizenry dependent upon the government for their very livelihoods. That is not a conservative ideology, but a liberal one. Fascism is to silence the dissenters, the people who don't agree with what you say, limiting the freedom of speech. Liberal ideology. And for anyone that tries to argue that, Donald Trump said, that's all y'all can talk about. The man lives rent-free in your head. Instead of worrying about what Donald Trump's doing, because let's face facts, the federal government really doesn't affect your life all that much, because the owners of this country, as George Carlin so succinctly put it, decided a long time ago who they want in charge. The lobbyists, Big Pharma and all of that, they decide what laws get passed with all the money that they throw into the account. And if you don't believe me, you need look no further than your favorite, they call him a democratic socialist. You can polish a turd, it's still a turd. Socialism is the only thing that you can vote your way in, but you got to shoot your way out of. But Bernie Sanders had a supporter-funded campaign, and he withdrew in just enough time to where he got to keep all that donation money. Look at his net worth now. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the bartender, old horse mouth. Same thing. These people on the left are not there to help you. Neither are the people on the right. Washington, D.C. is there to help one thing and one thing alone, themselves. And once you people seem to understand and grasp that concept that you are simply a platform for their playing board, for their game of Monopoly, because you're on all fours and that game board is on your back. But once we can all get over this dumb shit and stand up all at once, their game will be over. Stop allowing yourself to hate your neighbor because of a political ideology. Stop enacting violence, liberals, on your neighbor because they said something you don't agree with. They're entitled to their opinion as you are entitled to yours. Don't try to force it on one another, and definitely don't try to do it using firearms.